What's up guys, Romsicle here, and today we are talking about some clicky switches with the center of attention being these bad boys right here. These are the THICC Novelkeys Box Navy switches. So I've actually had these switches for quite some time now, I think a little over a year now. And I was supposed to do an XT75 build with them, but I never ended up doing it even though I have all the parts still here. I'm trying to find the perfect switch for that keyboard. But from the experience I've had using these switches, these are definitely some incredible clicky switches. So let's get right into the specs. So these are the Novelkeys Box Navy switches. They are clicky tactile switches manufactured by Kale with a 1.8mm actuation distance and a 3.6mm bottom out distance. And coming in at 34 cents per switch, it's definitely on the cheaper side. For the actuation forces, oversimplified, it has a 60 gram actuation force and a 90 gram bottom out force. But the force curve shows that you need at least 77 grams to press the switch, and the actuation comes after the bump and at the end gives you around an 80 gram bottom out force. So this is definitely an extremely heavy switch. This is a box switch, so it does have the reinforced stem for lower tolerances of stem wobble. It has a clear plastic top housing and a nylon bottom housing with 3 pins, meaning you need a plate to use these switches properly. And the inside of the switch is pretty interesting. On the stem you have 2 protrusions. You have one for the click bar and one for the actuation. And this is how the click and actuation are related. You have this click bar and the protrusion will go over it. And once the stem has gone down far enough, the green piece on the other side will pop out, resulting in a key press. The box jade has the exact same thing, but the click bar is slightly thinner and it's an overall lighter switch. Pressing on these switches feels a lot like popping bubble wrap because of the pre-travel and the amount of pressure you need to press the switch down. They definitely feel nice and tactile when you're typing on them, but you will need some time to get used to the spring weights because they are relatively heavier than majority of the switches out there. Now you might be thinking, who in their right mind would purposely buy clicky switches for their mechanical keyboard? That's an excellent question, and there's only 2 possible answers here. Number 1 is that they're still new to the mechanical keyboard scene, so they still like clicky switches, or they haven't tried out any good linears or good tactile switches to make the switch. Or number 2, they simply just like clicky switches. There's actually a lot of people who actively use clicky switches despite having the option of using linear or tactile switch keyboards. I don't understand them, but if they like using those clicky switches on their keyboard, that's up to them. Now, I've reviewed a lot of clicky switch keyboards in the past, and they all sounded decent at the time, as it should to a newcomer coming into the mechanical keyboard scene. But if you didn't know, not all clicky switches are made equal. Some of them have a higher pitch than others, and in the case of these box navies here, they have a much deeper pitch. So let's listen to the sound test now. And just to remind you all, because of the structure of these Kale switches, you don't really get the benefits of smoothness if you lube these switches because of how little contact there already is between the stem and the housing. So there's virtually no sound difference between a stock box navy versus a lubed box navy. You can lube them if you want, but the difference is so minuscule, it's not worth the amount of hours that you're taking to lube these switches. So just by the sound alone, you might not be able to comprehend the thickness of these clicky switches. So I have some Otemu blue switches, Ajaz blue switches, and some classic razor green clicky switches as a reference and to see how they hold up against these box navy switches. And hopefully now you understand the selling point of the THICC CLICC. The box navy switches are by far the heaviest switch I've ever used, and I think they should only be used for one thing only: typing. Your fingers are going to be so sore if you decide to game on this, especially on games where you have to constantly press down a button to move. Man, you'll be playing for 30 minutes and you're going to have to tap out because your fingers are going to be stressed as hell. They're definitely a fun switch to use when you're alone, but not so much when you're around people. 2 minutes into typing on a keyboard with these switches on and they will be hella annoyed of you. And not only do these switches help you lose friends, they also hinder your typing performance. With the 90-gram bottom out force, people who bottom out their switches will definitely feel the weight under their fingers. And even with the 60-gram actuation force, despite it being 30 grams lighter than the bottom out force, it still is relatively heavier than majority of the switches on the market. But overall, it's a very fun switch to use once you get used to the weight. For a while at least. I've definitely had a great time typing on these switches, and if you can use these switches for a very long time, then props to you. These thick click switches are something else. If you're looking for a heavy AF switch with a satisfying click, then the box navies are perfect for you. I'm not sure if there's any other switches on the market that have a similar thick click to the box navies besides the box jades, since they're technically the same switch, but if there are, let me know in the comments down below. Links to buy the switch is also in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.